Hi, everybody. This is Casey Lau from the Hyper Room. I am here with Pat Wang from Icon Heroes. We're doing a special episode here to kind of talk to some people involved in pop culture for San Diego Comic-Con at home. Since we're all at home, we thought we'd bring out some special guests to talk about the world of pop culture. And first, I'd like to introduce my co-host, Pat Wang from Icon Heroes. Pat, how are you doing?
What's up, Casey? Doing great and excited to be launching our first Comic-Con interview with you. Got some exciting panels this week and hope everyone enjoys watching them.
So, Pat, who is that standing right next to you in the shot?
This here is our Earth 90 Flash statue that we made exclusively for GameStop last year. I've always been a fan of the 1990 show and always wanted to make a statue of that Flash, but we only had the license for the CWDC shows. So as soon as we saw John's Flash was going to be on the show, we started developing the statue, and GameStop saw it, wanted it for themselves, and I believe they're already sold out.
And of course, our special guest today is the legendary actor from the 1990 Flash TV show, which is now celebrating its 30th anniversary, Mr. John Wesley Shipp. John, welcome to the show.
Thanks, guys. It's good to be here. It's good to see you. Hi.
What have you been doing? The fastest man alive is now in lockdown. What have you been doing in the last few months?
I've been running crop circles in my carpet. No, it's, we're catching up on TV a lot of binge watching, I've actually gotten involved in some projects to keep me creatively busy, such as there was a Pride Plays Festival, and Wendy Malick did it. It was a play by Ryan Haddad and directed by Danny Sharon. And there are a lot of really good actors, and they asked me to be a part of it. It was a virtual reading of a play in development. So we rehearsed it for a week, all on Zoom. And then we did a Zoom presentation for about 130 people. It was an invited audience because it was in development. And it went really well, And then the next morning I was auctioned off by LaGuardia School of the Arts. That was very weird. And I ended up doing it was like a class. I had about 15 students, and it was a very interesting session because they were all drama, dance, music students. And for an hour, they asked questions that were so perceptive that you would expect students to ask about process, not the usual questions, which I also love, answering, but about, what is the process? Is there a difference in playing a superhero? How do you approach it? Did you feel differently? How did you feel wearing a suit in 1990 versus 2014? What's the difference in the Tony Award winning Broadway play that I did? What's the difference in theater acting and television acting? How did you find your experience in independent film? Do you switch your technique for daytime to primetime? I mean, the questions were really perceptive and very stimulating. And we had about an hour. They called it a master class. I don't know if I would be quite so grandiose, but it was great talking to these young people right at the outset of their careers.
I want to know, first question, and I'm going to try and stump you on a little bit of not so broad questions that you've been asked many times before, but when you got the script for The Flash the first time, had you seen the Tim Burton Batman film yet?
No, I hadn't. In fact, I had been on Broadway in New York. I had won my 2 Emmys for daytime. I was coming out. I just did Neverending Story 2, which we shot in Munich and Vancouver. The exteriors were Vancouver. It's very interesting. Anytime we're outside, we're in Vancouver. As soon as we walk through a door, we're on a soundstage in Munich. Just a little interesting bit of trivia. And I had come out to LA, and I did a project with Jack Scalia, and which I played this crazy artist who came in and sliced up all my paintings with a machete during my art opening. It was great. And then I heard about this treatment of a superhero that was circulating Warner Brothers for CBS, and that they wanted me to come in and read for it. And I was used to comic books being spoofed on television, which I loved. I never missed an episode of the old Batman series as a child, but that's not where my aspirations lay, you know? And so I was very leery about it. And I remember April Webster, multiple Emmy Award-winning casting director, talking to me and saying, "John, just read the script." And this goes to your question. Just read the script. That's all I ask. She said, "We're taking it seriously. We're coming to you because you have a sense of truth about what you do. And that's what we want. We want to take the character seriously." And then, so I said, okay. And I read Danny Bilson and the late Paul DeMeo's treatment. And I realized that these were human relationships, that this was an unblessed son of a family where real cops worked the street, but Barry was safe in the crime lab, so his mother wouldn't be afraid all of her men might not come home that night. And my older brother, named Jay in our series, was my dad's favorite because he was a real cop. You know, Dad was always saying things to me like, my mom would tell me to be safe, and he'd say, what's he going to do? Stub his toe on a footprint, you know, really discounting of Barry, which Barry was okay with. Barry was CSI before CSI was cool, you know? And I was reading along and I thought, okay, I can relate to that. And then he gets these powers that he doesn't understand and it freaks him out. And I love his first reaction. This is really where they got me. His reaction wasn't, I want to go be Hugh Hollywood superhero. His reaction was, I want to get rid of this. You know, I've accepted, you know, being an ordinary human being. These extraordinary circumstances are freaking me out. I've accepted my lot in life. I'm doing all the good that I can in my corner of the world. So I go to Tina with the deal, help me get rid of him. And then my brother's killed. This brother who, although he's the favorite, who I love very much, and I love that Barry-Jay relationship in the pilot, and I mourned the loss of Tim Thomerson, you know, when Jay was killed. And I thought, God, I can totally play this. I can totally play the grief, and then the desire to avenge the death of your brother, and that's why he assumes his superpowers. And Danny and Paul talked to me. They said, you know, they all assured me it's the most expensive project Warner Brothers has ever done for television. We'll have groundbreaking for 1990, special and visual effects. And the suit will only be seen in the episode maybe 25% of the time. But your job mostly will be to find the heart and the passion and the sincerity of Barry Allen, because we want people to take it seriously. Flash and Tim Burton's Batman were both in development at Warner Brothers at the same time, around this new way of presenting these stories on screen for a wider audience and for an adult audience to take seriously.
I think one of the cool things about the 1990 Flash show was that they had just kind of reimagined Flash after the Crisis on Infinite Earths, the comic version of it, right? And that Wally West became the Flash, and the writer Mike Baron started to create all these kind of more realistic, I don't know if realistic is the word, but more like he had to eat a lot of food to keep his metabolism up and things like that.
We saw the physical, we even tried to various success, because we did it and then we dropped it. I mean, there were moments when my Barry would sag, you know, because he'd be burning up energy, but we were trying to do so much in an hour episode without CGI that some of our threads got dropped. And I think that was one of them. I'd start to, you know, the toll you would see on me. But they did keep eating and eating and eating. And remember, we didn't have CGI, so I had to eat and eat and eat. And they had a bucket beside me so that I could be eating. I could stop and spit food out. I could eat and eat. Same thing with the card tricks. Same thing with the running. Now, as Jay Garrick, you know, I can assume the pose, and then a lot of times my digital double takes over, and we can go on and tell scenes about the characters and the people and what's happening, you know, how this group of people, many of whom are ordinary human beings caught in extraordinary circumstances. That was my template for my Barry, you know. And I always felt that my job was to hook, if I could get the audience to identify with what Barry was going through, because, you know, I always say we all have our vein of gold. We all have our special talent, each one of us, something that we do that if we weren't on the planet, it would not come into existence in quite the same way. So how do we deal with that? How does an exceptionally gifted concert pianist deal with that superpower? How does a incredibly gifted scientist, illustrator, artist, storyteller, how do you deal with your extraordinary talent? Of course, the bigger the talent, the more the challenges. And so if I could hook people into Barry and they could make the transference to how they were meeting situations in their own life that they didn't ask for, that they might not have chosen, then if they were hooked into Barry, when I went in the suit, they would come with me and we would both be looking at the world from the inside out. That was always my way of framing it.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned a lot of CG work that was done today, but back then, one thing I know that wasn't CG was your body, right? I was watching some YouTube clips of you when you're doing the soaps, and you're kind of skinnier, thinner guy. But when we see you in the Flash, you are built like a superhero. Can you talk a little bit about what kind of a workout regime you had when you were preparing? Was that the vision of the character that you had in your mind?
No, it was just me. It was a combination because I started working out. I didn't start working out really hard until probably pre-Guiding Light. So by the time I went on Guiding Light, I was ripped. I was 30 pounds lighter, but I was ripped. In fact, they started running. I was running around in a Speedo singing "You Needed Me" all the time. You know, the costume designer said, it's not so much a matter of how to dress John as how to undress him in these scenes. And they did this, Associated Press did this article, Shipp adds body to soap. So I kind of got hooked into that. And then as I got older, I continued to work out and I just gradually thickened, you know what I mean? So that I already pretty much had that body when I was auditioning for the Flash. Of course, they augmented it. You know, they did the plaster cast, the individually sculpted foam latex muscle pieces, which built on my musculature, but expanded it out, you know. But yeah, I mean, they did have me shirtless on the Flash. Yeah. I'll tell you, I continued to get more muscular. The most muscular I ever was NYPD Blue. About years later when I pretty much showed all of me. I have the distinction of being one of the first butts in prime time. So, you know, it's like when they say your career follows you, you know, sometimes literally.
You've had such a great career even after the Flash. I just want to know, obviously when the last episode aired and maybe the producer said we're not going to do season 2, did you ever think you'd be still on the show, that you did one season? You probably didn't get a lot of feedback on it until it aired even, right? It's not like there's no internet to talk about it like back then. You know, 30 years later, we're still talking about the Flash and it's such a beloved show, even with the new show on. What does go through your mind when you hear these things?
Well, those are really two different questions. The thing I think that made CBS too confident was that in the summer before we premiered, we did a big screen backlot Warner Brothers International Press premiere worthy of a major motion picture because they were so hot on it. And our reviews were through the roof, 9.5 on the Zowie Wowie scale. I think the Washington Post was the one that singled out the acting, which is rare for an action adventure show. All except one. The Associated Press review is the meanest review I've ever gotten. And I can almost quote that one word for word, but I won't. We got these phenomenal, incredible reviews, which led CBS to say, okay, well, if we're spending this much money and we're getting these kinds of reviews on the heels of Batman, we're going to put them in our hardest time slot, opposite Cosby and The Simpsons at their peak, which was a mistake, and which they admitted to me later was a mistake. Still, we held our own in that time slot. I think our pilot got between 15 and 18 million viewers, even being up against them. And but then we were preempted for baseball. Then we were back on. Then we were preempted for the Gulf War. And then we were back on, and then half an episode, and Daddy Bush threw up at a state dinner in Japan. So we were preempted for that because we had to see that, you know.
Just on a side note of that, I remember I used to have a VHS cassette tape time to record the Flash, and you imagine how sad I was when baseball showed up when you played it back.
If we had DVRs where you could just program it and catch it whenever it aired,
yeah,
you know, we probably would have lasted more than one season. But I tell young people there was a land long ago and far away. It was before DVR, you know. And so when I began to hear from our core audience, we can't find you, I knew it was a matter of time. And it was so difficult because we were working so hard. I was there 55 to 80 hours a week. Now, you can imagine what the crew was going through. Our transportation department was putting in 24, 25-hour days. You know, we were shooting all night long till dawn. We were blacking in the back lot, tenting in the back lot to shoot day for night. You know, a lot of times we would be going home when the studio executives were coming to work, and they would be going, "Man, are you guys out of your minds?" But it took us 9 days, 2 units shooting simultaneously, and they'd shuttle me back and forth between units to get our 1 hour of television. Because, as Danny Bilson has said, when we wanted to blow up a truck semi full of cars and shoot flames 50 feet in the air, we really had to do it. Yeah. You know, when they wheeled the winged helmet guy out in the Trickster episode and blew him up, we blew out more windows in back alleys around Hollywood at certain locations, you know, that I could possibly count. Because I'll always remember, like, a car was supposed to explode. Well, the explosion would inevitably be bigger than we had planned, and windows would blow out. We'd be in a back alley. I can see Danny and the DP looking at each other going, uh-oh, you know. But it was a challenge then, because we simply had to spend so much time getting our visual and our special effects.
John, in 1979, there was a show called Legends of the Superheroes, and the way they simulated the Flash was having him still in one scene, vanish, and then appear in another scene. And then fast forward to 11 years, and your Flash appeared to actually run with those streaks behind him. The special effects in your show seemed pretty groundbreaking at the time.
We had on our, what was it, the 25th anniversary, we had we showed the 2 Trickster episodes at a theater in Los Angeles and had a red carpet event. Mark Hamill came, you know, I came, Joyce Heiser, Andrew Kreisberg from the new show came. Our producers, Danny and Paul, came, the special effects team from the old show, from the new show. And then we did a Q&A afterwards. And it was very interesting for me to listen to the special effects guys say, yeah, we built on the effects that you guys did. At that point, it was 24 years ago, going forward, that you guys pioneered the effects that we're using today. So how that, you know, all fit together.
So interesting. And then now moving out into the next part of it, talk a little bit about your relationship with Greg Berlanti. You meet him on the set of another show. You must have got along because he keeps you in mind later on when he's developing a new TV show.
You know, that was another. I've been very lucky in my career to land in different mediums at seminal moments in redefining those mediums, right? In the early 80s, I landed on daytime TV during the youth revolution. My leading lady was Julianne Moore. Kevin Bacon was my roommate. Yeah. You know, we were getting primetime numbers. They were throwing money. Then I went to Broadway. And then by the time I got to Flash, it was the beginning of a new way of telling these stories for media. And then I got to Dawson's Creek, and it was a new way of writing stories for kids. as I say, instead of writing down to a young audience, writing up to a young audience, that they had an interior world and thoughts and a vocabulary to express it, and it was like nothing we had ever seen written for young people before. And of course, Greg Berlanti was one of my head writers. I've always been, very fond of Greg. Of course, my God, he's exploded. I was able to be a presenter year before last at the International Emmy Awards held here in New York. And he was presented with the Founders Award. I would love to have presented his award, but I presented a different category. But they were saying he has 15 shows on the air. I think now it's closer to 20. It's like when I saw him, I'm like, how are you doing it? You now have 2 kids, you're in a relationship. It's like, he's like, well, I have a lot of good people, and I choose wisely the people who are working with me. He said, but it's a challenge. I remember when I was doing a play with Judith Ivey, I was workshopping a musical in the afternoon. She was performing Hurly Burly on Broadway, for which she won the Tony. And she was filming The Lady in Red in the mornings. And she was followed around by a secretary that was just telling her, okay, now you have 10 minutes for lunch. Now you got to go here. Now you got, and I said, Judy, why are you doing all of this at once? And her response was, you got to ride the wave when it's coming in. Because you never know, when that wave is going to stop. No, we jokingly say that Variety, they map out all the Greg Berlanti articles and then they fill in around them.
That's so interesting because it's true. Like 25 years later, you're being asked to play another pivotal role in the show today as this time as the father of the Flash. Talk a little bit about how did that opportunity come up? What were did you not want to be part of it again? Are you interested in doing it? Talk a little bit about how you got involved in the new version of the Flash.
First of all, for the years that I was working with Greg in Wilmington, I never knew he was a Flash fan. I never knew that one of his favorite characters was the Flash. Of course, for 24 years, I had heard the Flash was going to be a movie. It was going to be this actor. It was going to be that. It would fall in and out of development, countless time. So when I heard that they had finally gotten it together for the CW and we're going to build it around this young actor, Grant Gustin, first of all, I watched his work and I went, oh yeah, because there was the same thing I tried to do, he did better, which was just a sense of truth, playing these circumstances for real, the stakes being real, and being able to see how it affects him as a human being, which then makes the fireworks that much more fun. People ask me, do you want to be a part of it? I said, they could go one of 2 ways. They might want to break with the old and have something which would be the traditional way and have something entirely new and entirely their own. I would be perfectly fine with that because 24 years representing as the only live action Flash, that's a long time, I said, and then I heard how Jeff Johns had blown up the Allen family, how suddenly Henry was in Iron Heights for 14 years, wrongfully convicted of killing Nora in front of an 8-year-old Barry. Emmett Walsh was not wrongfully convicted of killing Priscilla Pointer in front of an 8-year-old me or 10-year-old me, right? So I thought, wow, that's dark. And I thought to myself and said to some friends, if they came to me, because everyone was saying, Jay Garrick, you got to be Jay Garrick. And I was like, that's a little on the nose. And I said, that's an interesting character. If they were to come to me, that's the role I would want. And the next thing I knew, they had called my agent and asked for some footage on a couple independent films I had just recently worked on because they wanted to see me. By that point, Dawson's Creek was what, 24? Well, I left in 2001. Yeah. And so it was 13 years in the rearview mirror. And so they got the footage and they looked at it and then they called my agent And my agent said, the Flash called and they've made an offer. I said, which role? And they said, Henry Allen. I said, tell them yes. Because
Amazing.
people said, is it weird coming back? And I said, they said, is it familiar? I said, well, in the way that maybe you walk up to a house and the house looks the same, but you open the door and all the furnishings, all the furniture, the wallpaper, the colors, everything is different. Everything is brand new. Henry Allen, that version of Henry Allen is a role any actor would have wanted to play. First of all, they wrote him beautifully.
Yeah.
Second of all, my experience as the Flash, Grant knowing I was the Flash, me knowing the enormity of what he was walking into, and maybe what some of his insecurities might be, what some of his hopes and dreams might be. We had a lot of our homework was done for us, right? Right. And I was very clear why I was there. I felt I was there twofold because we had maintained an audience over 24 years miraculously, because I knew, because I was doing conventions when it came out on DVD in 2008, I want to say. And the response was still overwhelming. It was to bring my audience into the new effort, you know. And secondly, you know, it was of course to pass the torch. But what I loved about the way we did it, and people kept saying, oh no, you need to, before they saw it, you need to be Jay Garrick. I said, I know why you're saying that. And you want a passing of the torch. I promise you, you will get it, but it will be in the form of a father-son blessing, which to me was much more meaningful. You know, I would have wanted Henry Allen if I had never played Barry. Having played Barry made me a better Henry Allen. And let me tell you, the scenes they wrote, I also knew that, okay, if Henry is in Iron Heights, wrongfully convicted, everyone, including his best friend Joe West, believes he's guilty. The only person who doesn't is his son, who is in the process of coming to terms with these new powers and abilities. And nobody knows about that except me. I thought that's going to carve out a very unique spot within the context of the series for me and Grant, because action adventure, strife, villains, music, you know, and then the lights would go down, the music would soften. We go to Iron Heights. He and I would walk into that phone booth and we'd pick up the phones and look each other and tell the truth. You know, I knew that it would carve out a very unique spot for the two of us to really have a meaningful exchange within the context of this great big show. And that's the way it happened. And I wouldn't trade those Henry Barry scenes for anything in the world. They're some of my most favorite scenes in my career. Also because of who he is, you know, he was just so honest, just so heartbreakingly honest. And, you know, we didn't really have to rehearse. We just learned our lines, made sure we could see each other. We couldn't do our business. We couldn't get up and walk around. We couldn't do, you know, we're totally in straight. And that forced us, you know, to go right here. And I'll tell you, I watch those scenes now, and as uncool as it is, I get choked up.
I think those scenes with you and Grant talking on the phone are still the most emotional scenes of the series so far. I know you shared a lot of scenes with him as Henry Allen, Jay Garrick, and the 1990 Barry Allen, but those scenes as father and son were touching.
I loved, and what made, thank you, what made that possible also was Henry, and it made it very hard to turn around and reset for Jay, because Henry, his primary focus, his primary concern, his only concern was to make sure that Barry was okay, could let go of Henry's situation, would have enough self-esteem that I could just bathe him in love and self-esteem and encouragement and affirmation, that he would be able to go out into the world and be the kind of hero and the kind of man that he needed to be. And so when he came to, somebody made the crack, Henry was something about the most well-adjusted prisoner I've ever seen, you know, like I was always in a good mood. And I said, well, when have we ever seen Henry? We've only ever, yes, Iron Heights is hell. We know what Iron Heights is, but we only ever see Henry when he's with Barry. He's not going to show that to Barry. What he's going to show is, I've accepted my lot. And now you have got to let go of this obsession you have that you're going to exonerate me after 14 years, you know, and you've got to go live your life. I am fine. I have made my peace with what my life is going to be. And that's where, and I love it when this happens, when the characters and the actors overlap. Because on one hand, you had John Shipp holding up a mirror to Grant Gustin to show him himself all of the wonderful things. This is what I see in you, Grant. This is what I see in you that I know will make you the perfect guy for this role as you grow into this role, you know, over the next several years. And it's exactly what Henry was doing. So sometimes it would be like, some of our lines were like, is Henry talking to Barry or is John talking to Grant? And when it can get that close to who you are, then it has a resonance that communicates with an audience.
Last show is like, it just keeps giving to you as an actor. Not only are you playing the father, now you're going to be, now they must have loved what you were doing and the fan response was huge. Now you are going to play Jay Garrick, and you're going to play the Earth 90 Flash. How did all that happen? And like, what is your reaction to it when Greg comes and says, this is what we're going to do?
It is crazy. It is just crazy. I knew Henry. I figured Henry had a shelf, going into it, I figured Henry had a shelf life of 1 season. It turned out to be 2. But when I came to do, I think, 4 episodes all together at the end of season 2, I thought, okay, this will be it. We will be saying goodbye to Henry, and that will be the end of mine, you know. But then when Greg spun out the story that, okay, there's a guy trapped in an iron mask. We don't know who he is. I didn't know who he was. The actor in the iron mask knew who he was playing. Let me tell you this, that actor, and I wish I could remember his name, deserves all the credit in the world, because they told him, 3 actors, to study the way we move our hands when we talk. And the day he filmed those scenes, they told him, it's John Wesley Shipp. And let me tell you, I go back and I watch the way his face is never seen, but his commitment to getting those, some of my friends thought it was me. Yeah. But his hands, I mean, he uses, I said, yeah, he's an actor. Wow. But anyway, I didn't know. And I found out in stages. First, I found out I was the man in the iron mask. I'm like, really? Wow, that's really something. And then I found out that turns out to be the doppelganger of Henry Allen. Wow, that's going to be tough for Barry, who turns out to be the real Jay Garrick, who is the character everybody wanted me to play to begin with. And I was like, you know, I'm totally not worthy, Greg. That is amazing storytelling, you know.
You wear 2 Flash suits on the show, Golden Age and Earth 90. Talk about each one. Was one more comfortable than the other?
It was the one that was made, of course, they were both designed by Oscar winners, Bob Short and Maya Manning. You know, I complained a lot about that suit in 1990 simply because a lot of attention was paid to the look of it and making it look like it was ripped off the comic book page of the era, and not a lot towards functionality. It had to be glued to my face. It was unbearably hot, you know. They finally got a vest like race car drivers where they plugged me into an ice chest in between scenes to circulate ice water to wake me up.
Wow.
'Cause I would just start, it's like, okay, John, come back. And, and
Wow.
of course I was raw. And then I was sweating so much, you come up to me and water would just pour out of the suit.
Wow.
So the foam latex uh, and the flocking began to crumble from about the third episode. So it was constant, $100,000 to build 4 suits in 1990. And they were constantly doing repairs. Also, it was a one singular construction split at the waist. In other words, there wasn't an undersuit and an outer shell, which meant they couldn't clean them, which meant they would hang them wet at like 3 a.m. in my trailer, spray them with Lysol, and they'd still be wet and sticky
Oh.
when I went to get in it the next day. 2 for me, 2 for my awesome stuntman, Dane Farwell, who I credit as much for the Flash. I was Barry Allen. He was as much the Flash as I was. He broke his, getting it just right. The stunts and he was just a solid rock. I'll always sing the praises of Dane Farwell. To the working with him, and also in the Pollux episode, the Blue Flash episode, where I was acting with myself.
Yeah.
He would memorize my movements down to a T, so that when we turn around and I do the other side and they were on his back, he would do exactly what I had done on the other side. He was phenomenal. Anyway, so I broke out all over my back, because they couldn't, the Lysol and the thing and the glue and it was really the hardest thing I'd ever done. So at the end of, like the 3rd week in August through the 2nd week in May, 4 days off for Christmas, and that was it. By the time May rolled around, I was like, man, I never care. I don't care if I never get back, in this suit. We've had a really good season. And I went off to do Dancing at Luna Stone Broadway. The new suit, they gave more. You would hope in 24 years there would be, some thought given. Now there are under suits with the musculature underneath and outer shells. So you can peel, particularly Jay Garrick, I can peel that Jay Garrick off and let down the suspenders and breathe. Also, you lose 40% of your body heat through your head. I don't know if you noticed, but every chance I get, that helmet is under my arm.
Yeah.
People would come to me with water and start, are you okay? Do you need water? And I'm like, no, this is Christmas. Are you kidding? You should have known what it was like, 24 years ago. I'm delighted, I was totally freaked out when I found out they wanted me to get back into the a version of the 1990 suit, simply because by that point, 28 years had passed. Who wants to be compared with themselves? Talk about a 10-year challenge, let's try a 30-year challenge, And they all said, you'll be fine, you'll work it out. And I have to give it to Kate Main and the craftspeople at Ocean Drive Leather in Vancouver, because we worked that suit, we shaved it down, they made it out of more breathable materials. They constructed it so they did not have to glue it to my face. I could whip the cowl forward, steam would come out, in between takes. But I got to tell you, the first time I wore it, from dusk till dawn in the destruction of Earth 90, brilliantly directed by Tom Cavanaugh, by the way. Oh, it was like a little cinematic feature, so much so that they played it on each show as the tease. But I was like, by the time dawn came around, I took a selfie of myself in the trailer like, oh no, I couldn't do this every week anymore. It's like, yikes. But I felt like we pulled it off, I wasn't, and I also, with that group of filmmakers, You know, you feel protected. You know you're going to be protected. They're not going to let you look bad.
Mm.
You know what I mean?
Mm.
So if there were some bad shots, they ended up on the cutting room floor. But I loved the opportunity and the way they wrote it, Sterling Gates and that group, of how they brought the story full circle,
Yeah.
and that it wasn't sentimental. And this is what I told Sterling. He said as he was writing it, he was crying. He was crying. I said, well, let me tell you this, what I really appreciate. It's not sentimental. It's, no, kid, there's a job. It has to be done. This is my sacrifice to make. You've got your whole life ahead of you. Yeah, I got some new tricks. I'm going to steal your speed and keep riding the lightning, son. And off I go. Oh, and I got to meet I got to welcome Cress into the, into the Arab, which was one of my absolute favorite moments. I went up and told him, I said, I am so psyched that I get this moment with you. He was like, you're psyched you're getting it with me. And, but yeah, that's one of my favorite moments when, I'm telling him what a hero he was, and that I'll never be able to repay him, and that, he really saved everybody to give us the time that we needed to figure out a solution. And then I get on that treadmill. Well, they pulled a fast one on me. I didn't know they were going to use that footage from 1990, where Tina, I say, I have faith in you, Tina. She says, well, I have faith in you too, Barry. Yeah. When they're coming around and I'm running, and then you hear that voice, and then you see my face from 30 years ago, and then it goes on her young face, and it's all about faith. And I love that they ended it on faith. And then you go back to Barry, and then he dissolves, because he knows not only what he's running away from, but he knows what he's running toward.
That's the thing about the show. The show writers definitely have a lot of feeling about the history of the character, the history of the show. Everything it plays to your strength as an actor, but also to the fans that have, like myself and like Pat, we've grown up with the character. There's so much respect given to the Flash. That's why I think the show is so popular amongst the new generation and the old generation, because of this.
I agree. And when I do Q&As at conventions, I say, the thing about it is, David Nutter, who directed our pilot and set the look of the show, the first couple of episodes, of course, Emmy winning for Game of Thrones, great director. I love David, and he has his tricks. The scene where I was supposed to be like coming out and being arrested, and Nora had just been killed. They think I did it, and I see Barry. I go, Barry, it's very emotional. Right before we shot that scene, he came up to me and he said, you were my hero growing up. Okay, action. And I'm like,
amazing, amazing.
But it was amazing. Also, talk about getting to that new set. First time I met Andrew Kreisberg, that much taller than me, and I said, it's nice to meet you. And he said, actually, we've met. I said, we have. He said, yeah, I was an assistant on the back lot at Warner Brothers when you were shooting Flash in 1990. And I said, and we met. He said, oh yeah, I totally invaded your space and fanboyed out on you. And I'm like, was I nice? So, today's assistant is tomorrow's executive producer. There's a real lesson in that. But it was, I have to say, for a project that felt like it was interrupted too soon, and although we got the critical success for a number of reasons, we did not get the popular success that we had hoped. To be able to come full circle with a group of people who grew up with your show and who loved your show, and just sort of wrapped you in all of this love and respect to bring you back. I got to tell you, when I put on the Flash 90 suit for the first time, and I went in to Arrow, into that room, and they're all there. Kara's there, Green Arrow's there. Of course, Grant was pissed off that he was in the Green Arrow suit, but they were like, I walked onto the set feeling a little self-conscious, and Grant goes, man, this is the coolest thing we've ever done. They just made me feel so appreciated and comfortable that it was It was a wonderful full circle moment.
You've acted with several of these young actors playing DC superheroes. It must have been pretty surreal for them to see you in the Flash suit again.
Well, see, that never occurred to me. So that when it became apparent that that was the case, it caught me by surprise, and it was incredibly moving. I was incredibly moved. They knew when I came on as Jay Garrick, first time in a superhero suit in, at that point, 26 years. They knew that I was, oh my God, you know, am I making a mistake here? You know, over a quarter of a century later, trying, you know, and I walk on the set and the crew applauds, and, you know, I look over to the side and there's Candace going, you know, and then Grant brings the monitor, the camera forward so that I can see myself. And he says, see how great you look. I mean, they just totally wrapped me, you know, in support.
Yeah, it's great.
You know, I mean, it is a unique cast in that way. Each one of them, they want to have a good time, but they want to do the very best, most truthful work that they can do when it's time to yell action, you know.
Okay.
And I think it really sets Flash apart. Enjoy the other shows. I've met the other cast members. You know, I certainly respect, and the ones I've gotten to know, love. There's something unique. And maybe it's my history as much as anything else, but there's something unique about that Flash cast. And I have to say, it's generated from number one on the call sheet, who is Grant Gustin, because he loves to play around, but when it's time to work, it's time to work. And let's all get together, put our heads together, and make the truest hour of television that we can make, you know, because we owe it. You know, in some ways, the soap opera audience and the comic book audience are similar in this one way. Daytime TV audiences are lifelong. They know the families, they know the characters, they know when something rings false, they know when it's true. Comic book fans are lifelong. They know when something betrays a sense of truth, when it goes against what was established. I've had people come up to me, and I love that they share at conventions, you know, and I'll ask them, so how did you think that worked? Did that work? Mm-hmm. You know, and they'll go, oh yeah, it was great. It says, well, you know, and they will tell you, you know, but it's wonderful to play. I went to South America, 100,000 people in Lima, Peru, went to Ecuador, 75,000 people in Guayaquil, and with translators, we did They are so knowledgeable about the pop cultural art form. They are so knowledgeable about it, and it's wonderful to play, whether you're playing Shakespeare to a classical audience, whether you're whatever it is, if you're playing to an audience that really is educated about the medium that you're presenting to them, it's a very rich exchange.
That's fantastic. Well, this has been a great look back at the show for sure, John. We thank you so much for your time. Before we end this, though,
yes,
always remember the pilot, the 1990 pilot, as you know, such an amazing show. And that, do you still remember the very last line that you tell that little kid at the end of the show? Because that always stuck with me. Do you remember that line?
I tell him, first of all, I give him his father's track medal. And I say, and it's very hard for me to say to this day. It's like, you know, I couldn't run. Your dad didn't lose the race. He just ran out of track. And I may not be as fast as your dad, but if you ever need me, I'll be there. I'll be there in a flash.
Oh.
And then the big pan, and then up to the moon and the symbol. I'll always be grateful to Danny and Paul for that moment. Movie deal with Hallmark. And we were able to get 2 in the can. Luckily, we shot one in February, just before it shut down, which we aired in April, and then we just aired it again They want to do more. of those. Uh, I I was workshopping a play, my favorite project, called Hank and Jim Build a Plane, about the lifelong friendship of Henry Fonda and Jimmy Stewart, despite romantic rivalries and vast political differences. How they maintained a friendship from their very first days as starving actors in New York, all the way through superstardom. But there was one issue they could not discuss, and it comes to a head in the play around the House Un-American Activities Committee. And it's a wonderful metaphor. They got together every Sunday afternoon and built model airplanes for real in one of their garages. And that became the metaphor for, okay, how do we stay in relationship with those that we love, with whom we have significant differences? And I just think that's such important material for right now. And it's a brilliant play by David Gregory, who wrote it. And Sunny Spot Productions, Bruce Robert Harris and Jack Batman, Broadway, multiple Tony Award winning Broadway producers are behind it. And we were getting ready to have an out of town production before wanting to bring it into a small theater in New York City. And now everything's on hold. I was supposed to do, apropos of that, a production of 12 Angry Men. Oddly enough, again, the Henry Fonda role in 12 Angry Men at the Greenwich Theater with a friend of mine that I had worked with before, Mike, and as juror number 3. But again, everything is on hold, and we'll see. They're trying to figure out, how can we get production back up and running and get insurance companies to insure production? Yeah. Because, you know, we're very litigious on this side of the Atlantic. You know what I mean? It's like, so they got to figure a way. I understand Australia has divided production crews into quadrants, you know, so that they, if somebody gets sick, it doesn't go through the whole cast. Well, hopefully, I know there's a major ship that's talking about going back into production in August. I've heard rumors that the target date for Flash is September, and we'll just all keep our fingers crossed.
Great. Excellent. Again, thank you for your time today, John. It's really an amazing, I think for me and Patrick, an amazing time to be able to talk to you like this.
Thank you.
Please stay safe, and we'll be hopefully seeing you again on either in a play or on TV again real soon.
All right. Thanks so much, guys. And thank you for doing this. There's, as you know, there's no content, and people are so starved for content. So you're really doing a public service,
yeah,
both of you, in doing this. So thank you for allowing me to be a part of it.
Thank you. Thank you, John.
Thank you, John.